Okay, grade eights. I want to try to avoid doing a lot of talking here, but I don't really have a choice. There's a lot of things we have to go over, but the first thing that we have to deal with when it comes to probability is the difference between experimental probability and theoretical probability. And I'd like to spend some time tonight going over the two, showing you the somewhat subtle differences between the two, and giving you a chance to practice a couple of these before you actually get into school tomorrow. Okay, here we go. Okay, let's see if I can make this as clear as I can. The difference between experimental probability and theoretical probability is that experimental probability is an event occurring, okay? It's something that you've got some kind of information to base your information on, okay? So basically, it's the number of times an event occurs divided by the total number of trials. A good example of this, and let me just skip ahead here. A good example of this would be a batting average, okay? Now, I know for those of you who are saying, well, I don't know anything about baseball, but that doesn't really make a difference. Let me give you an idea of what I'm talking about. I'll bring up some text here so that I can type it out. Let's say we've got a baseball player who goes to bat 29 times and gets 11 hits. And what we're trying to do is, since we have this experimental information, we have this information that we have from a distance, we want to figure out what the probability is that that batter will get a regular hit whenever they come up to bat. Well, the way to do it is changing it into a fraction, which is 11 over 29, or a ratio too. So the amount of times that they have actually made the event happen divided by the amount of times that they've actually come up to bat would give you a percentage of their batting average, okay? So if I took, say, 11 and divided it by 29, their batting average would be, because they do the batting averages to two numbers, 379. Okay. Now, if we were looking at just percentage points, they would be batting at 38%, because I'm going to roll it up. I'm going to roll it up to the next number. Okay. So in other words, to figure out the percentage points from a fraction, you can do one of two things. You can either find a way to make the denominator work nicely into a 100, like say this was 50 or 4, one of those numbers that were a divisor of 100. You can always go up. Or you can divide the amount of activity, the amount of events, by the amount of potential events. Okay? Okay. So this is experimental probability. Let's go back to what we were looking at. So it's the number of times that something occurs versus the number of times that it actually is that you've had trials. So I got 11 hits and I went to bat 29 times. Okay? That's experimental probability. The other one is theoretical probability, and that's when we're looking straight in the eyes of numbers, okay? The number of outcomes favorable to that event and the number of possible outcomes. In other words, the number of times I want to see something versus the number of times or the number of possible outcomes that I could have. And I'll give you an example of it, okay? Number cube, a die, right? What is the probability of me getting a number that's less than 4? Okay, and if I roll the cube 40 times, how many times will 4 show? Well, if I roll this any number of times, it's going to come up to different things, right? I'm going to get different numbers each time I roll it. Tell you what, let me just roll it, if I can. Here we go. Select here. If I roll it at any time, I'm going to come up with a number.
5.
There you go. 5. All right. What's the chances that I'm going to roll something under 4? Well, if I can roll this
3
and get a number each time,
1 2
that would be experimental probability. Figuring it out based solely on the numbers and solely on what you see, that's theoretical probability. Okay? So the difference between the two of them, let's get away from that. The difference between the two of them is this. This, the number of times the event occurs, the total number of trials, that is experimental probability. Think batting average. The number of outcomes favorable to that event over the number of possible outcomes, that is theoretical. This takes an experiment. This takes just the plain numbers. Okay? I've got some ways for you to check it. I'm going to give you some opportunities to practice. do that as your homework tonight, and then we'll go over this in detail tomorrow. Have a good shot at it, guys. See you then.